All right. So we're back. Let's talk a little bit about the operations of one of your centers. So, how does a client come to one of your centers?
Well, I have to say, over the past 24 years, things have dramatically changed from when we first opened. It was all word of mouth that people found us. And now through social media, that's been a change.
Whose word, like church groups or?
Every social organization, schools, if they had a crisis pregnancy, they would refer them to us.
Not our homeschool group, because was that large enough?
We've gotten crisis clients from everywhere. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then your centers, do they run 24/7, 365 days a year?
Well, there might be someone, well, actually, there's a registered nurse who holds a cell that is available by cell. She does sleep at night, so, she's always available by phone. But each center has varying shifts, because what I established early on was the time that people had available. I only had swinging over here Saturdays to manage the whole organization. And so there's directors that can direct a whole center with 2.5 to 5 hours a week. And before COVID, we had at this center in Jeffersonville 350 clients that we managed with 3 shifts.
Wow. You said COVID kind of threw a wrench into things.
COVID changed things dramatically. There's some things that we changed with communicating. So we use Google Docs for documenting our services. And one of the positions that we have, called the donation coordinator, he or she can update the website database that we have virtually.
So are your clients more virtual or more in person?
Before COVID, during COVID, we had quite a few that were virtual. It's just not the best way to help someone in a crisis.
Why is that?
Because, they are in crisis with affording their place, or it's just not a good way to help a client emotionally.
Do they not? They don't come back for help as often?
Oh, they're available by phone. But it's what we found out over COVID is how important the human interaction is with our clients. That it's not about the things I thought that was driving them to us. It was more they needed the emotional support that we give them.
Yeah, I think that's the case for our education too. Is school works better for in person than virtual. So if you're trying to educate people in crisis, they're not going to learn so well if they're looking at a screen. So. But it is available. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
So then I guess you said you only run, if you were directing a center, it takes you 5 hours of your week. How many people in general do you think a center takes?
We survive here currently with 2-3 trained advocates, including your brother, who's the director. And our guiding rule is we like to have 2 on, at least 2 people, volunteers on for safety during a shift.
Why? Is there a safety
concern?
concern?
Really don't want to have only one person in the center with the variety of clients that we've helped. It's really not a good situation.
So don't trust that they won't be dangerous with their crisis.
Yeah, you really have to think defensively for your volunteers.
Has there been any cases of violence?
There's been threats, of course, especially when Roe got flipped. We had to take down our signage at the home.
Really? And
had a lot of crank phone calls and a lot of social media blocking.
Yeah. Wow. No direct threats to you, is it?
No.
So far been, that's good. Don't go after my mom. So an average time spent for a volunteer, is it same as
for an
director?
Advocate, ideally, it's like 2.5 hours, 3 hours a week.
Really? Yeah. Okay. So it's not like oh, you're a volunteer and it's a full-time job. It is
No.
whatever time you can give, which, it's an act of service for some people.
Our best volunteer is a busy one with an outside life that they come, they swing in, and they teach our clients how to be organized.
Yeah, I can relate now, being a starting father. You mentioned advocates. I guess, do you want to explain that role a little bit better, since that in the book it sounds like an advocate's also a counselor, but you've also explained that you can't use the word counselor?
Well, we were asked by one of our spiritual directors, who was a bishop, and he said that we were not to use the word counselor because we didn't have the right letters behind our name. So we switched to the word advocate, and some of our advocates have letters. Some of them are highly trained, but you also have advocates with a high school diploma.
So then what is the training for an advocate?
We put them through a series of videos, but I have to say the best training is every client coming through the door. So we bring them in slowly, have them watch one of our experienced advocates work with a client, and then when they're comfortable, then they can start.
And that witness, like, what is the protocol for, speaking to somebody in crisis? Is it just, telling them what they should do, or is it listening to where they are?
Mostly it's sharing the information that we have. And one of my inspirations for starting A Baby's Breath was my friend who walked into Planned Parenthood. She was told that her baby was a clump of cells. So we used to have models that showed the actual size of the baby, the most common age for an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have our ultrasound machine, which is our best defense in defending life.
And how often do you get to use that?
I think in the past year we provided ultrasounds to 15 abortion-minded or abortion-vulnerable clients.
Okay. Are all your clients abortion-minded?
No, I would say majority are choosing life, and they just need help with the choice for life.
Oh, so you don't need someone who's just in a crisis but would choose life can come here. And
most of our clients, that's why I named the organization A Baby's Breath, so they would know coming through the door that we're pro-life.
Yeah. But good to know for everyone who doesn't know. It's not just for abortion minded, it's also a service for life choosing in general. I think people, especially church going people, get confused, like, why would I go to a crisis pregnancy center? I'm not 16-year-old high school that, make a pejorative stereotype, but you could tell me you've seen all sorts of clients, right?
We define crisis as it's not a good time to be pregnant, before, during, or after. So we're choosing life. We do our best to help with that choice for life.
Okay. So then you have your advocates. That's the one main function of your organization, but then parts of your organization, like running, keeping lights on,
So the three parts of the leadership are the director, the general manager, and the donation coordinator.
Correct.
Those three positions constitute the executive director at each center. And the way I came up with this plan was after 5 years, after doing everything through me, I kind of wrote down all my responsibilities, and they fell into, I call it the people jobs, training volunteers, handling clients, and then the general manager jobs, raising enough money to provide rent, lights, utilities, and then the third, which is all about the computer, the donation coordinator, so that everybody just can do their job in a succinct amount of time, and collaborate, not footstep with one another, but share the responsibilities of running the center.
How does the funds get used?
Okay, so who makes the decisions on how the funds get used? That would be like a local board decision.
Okay.
And whether a board needs to decide on moving the center or renewing the lease, that's a board decision.
Okay.
The general manager would help facilitate the funds getting raised. And we have a couple different ways we do that. One is a sponsorship program for each center. Another one is called an Angel Club program, which is a monthly subscription. It comes through the website.
Okay.
And the silent auction and the golf outing are the two other ways we raise funds.
And those, I think you've mentioned the golf outing, that's specific for, say, the Independence program. And you could do a fundraiser that's specific for another service, correct?
We used the golf outing actually to start the home. That was the initial purpose of the golf outing. And we raised over $100,000 to transition the space over in Phoenixville into the ability to provide housing for our homeless pregnant clients. Right. So then once we finished raising enough money to provide housing, then we had a group that still was interested in doing the golf outing. So we created this Independence program, which is what I described.
Okay. And then your silent auction, those funds, those are
the shared costs of all the centers, all the insurances, the cell phones, the advertising.
And then I think you said you started with a Run for Life. But
Run for Life was the beginning of the organization. Then we used to have Run for Life at all the centers. That was kind of, the main way we started the centers. But what we found over COVID, things dramatically changed. Virtual runs don't work. That's what we learned. So only one center currently has.
Ice cream sales.
No.
That was in the book. I laughed at that one.
I know.
Well, it was a go and purchase ice cream at the end of the day and see if you can get $50,000 in a day from one store.
So ridiculous. Like, you really have to be a math major to explain fundraising. And I don't mean to sound sarcastic, but you have to do a detailed analysis, like how many tickets will you sell and how many sponsors will you have, what are my expenses, to know what your net profits are.
So then I guess kind of considering money in it, how does the board make a decision to, say, branch into a different service or start another center?
It just evolved naturally. With each center, it would get to a point where it was like clockwork. You'd have your Run for Life, and then you'd have maybe, a couple people that would support you monthly. That's how the first center started. We always wanted to have a year's worth of money in the bank before we rolled into the next.
Okay.
And so now this has been the formula that we used to start all the centers, with the exception of we did something different down in the mainline center, and a man gave us $20,000. And I will never do that again, because if they're not learning how to raise the money themselves, they'll turn back to you and ask for more money at the end of the year.
Elaborate that story? It's in the book, but the mainline center, I think, was a sort of a test to see if people were going to be as committed to it as they say.
Right. The mainline center for sure was, I think, the biggest challenge, because
give the whole story of that, so that
we had a generous donor gave us $20,000, right. And then at the end of that year, he was not going to keep giving us $20,000 every year. So we tried to teach them how to do a Run for Life, and it wasn't near as successful as the Run for Life here at Jeffersonville, which really was perplexing. You would think a center on the main line would be the most affluent, but
where is the main line for people?
It was initially a mile away from a Planned Parenthood down in St. David's.
Okay, so is that close to Villanova? And
then it moved down to Bryn Mawr, which I think I wrote about this in my book, that I let the GM make the decision of where they wanted the space to be, and it was $24,000 a year with a 3-year deal. So the total cost of the lease agreement was $75,000.
Okay.
And then So the group really didn't coalesce in terms of raising enough money to provide the funds for that center. And I've learned the hard way that you really have to test the group's initiative and let them figure out if they want a center there or not, and see if they have the stamina to go and meet the obligations of the financial obligations of the center.
So you kind of have to give a little bit of a trust to a group that may or may not succeed, right, in order to see if there's going to be a way to expand. And
right.
Obviously 5 of them so far have been a huge positive success, but there's going to be some trials that aren't as successful.
One of the other lessons that I write about in the evolvement of the Mainline Center was I do not recommend memorializing the center funds with somebody who lost somebody.
What do you mean?
It's just there's too much emotional attachment to using a fundraiser to fund a crisis center, and it became more about the memorial than it did about raising enough money to keep the doors open.
Yeah, I know. Sort of, I think what you're talking about is some people would step in, act to benefit the organization, but more or less promote the memorization of a loved one who passed, and that can kind of detract from Baby's Breath's mission.
Exactly.
Which is to fundraise for these centers and carry out the work that a Baby's Breath does. So then what do you do with those people that have high ambitions?
So what we did was we moved into the most affordable place we could find on the main line, which is 450 square feet, where we are currently in Wayne. And it's, got good foot traffic. It's been quite an uphill battle to get through COVID and resurrect the staff down there, but we have a great team down there now.
Okay. So maintaining your budget is how you maintain an organization, basically. And
yes.
Keeping your focus on what the organization does.
Yep.
Okay.
It's been both financial integrity and integrity in general to the mission and charter. Those are the two biggest challenges.
Okay. Is it possible for you to say, I can run all 5 of these centers myself?
Individually, no. I mean, coming through COVID, the director here at Jeffersonville stepped down so she could homeschool, and it was probably the biggest challenge to the model to date, where I didn't have a director, I had no trained advocates. I had the donation coordinator who stayed throughout COVID, and we had enough sponsors to keep the doors open, but coming back from COVID was really a challenge in terms of replacing some of these key positions that we needed.
So it sounds like the core of your organization is a board, and that board makes decisions, and you're part of the board, but you aren't, the boot that steps on every idea you don't like. You go with how selected people will pick out the trajectory for your organization.
Really a good practice to rule by board. And that's another one of the reasons for the structure of a Baby's Breath. Because from my experience, if you have too strong of a leader, that creates like a black hole in her organization. And we've had to overcome them on occasion. It's not easy to do, to transition someone that doesn't want to be transitioned out, but it has to be done every now and then. Yeah, so that's kind of like a key thing, to not have a monopoly of power in one person.